Snow fell in heavy, whispering sheets across the quiet Seattle street, settling on the empty bench where a little girl lay curled beneath a threadbare coat. The world moved around her, cars passing, people hurrying, lights flickering, but she remained still, as if frozen in a moment no child should ever know. And that was the instant when Harrison Cole, a man whose every minute was normally counted in profits and meetings, stopped walking, and felt his entire life tilt into a new direction. Something deep inside him cracked wide open as he watched her tiny shoulders tremble in the cold. In that moment, wealth, titles, and expectations meant nothing. Only one thing mattered: she mattered. If you believe in kindness, second chances, or that one moment can change a life forever, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us spread more stories that inspire. Harrison had built his empire from the ground up, becoming one of the youngest tech CEOs in the country. The world admired him, investors trusted him, and magazines praised him. Yet behind the immaculate suits and polished interviews existed a man hollowed by grief. He had once been a father, but a tragic car accident 3 winters earlier had taken his son, Noah, and torn apart the life he had imagined. Since then, every snowstorm felt like a haunting reminder of the night everything fell apart. He had buried himself in work, avoiding schools, playgrounds, and anything that reminded him of the laughter he would never hear again. And tonight, the sight of that small, sleeping girl jolted old memories awake like ghosts tapping on a closed door. Her hair, tangled with frost, peeked from beneath a gray knit hat, and her pink dress, thin, worn, looked painfully out of place in the winter cold. Harrison could see she was exhausted, her breath slow and shallow, her cheeks flushed from the icy wind. Even before he stepped closer, worry surged through him. No child should be alone in the freezing dark, not in this city, not anywhere. He knelt beside her, brushing snow off her coat, and felt a tremor of anger, not at her, but at the world that had allowed her to end up like this. He scanned the empty street, searching for an adult, a backpack, anything that hinted at where she belonged. Nothing. Just silence, snow, and the distant glow of street lamps. Harrison felt a rising panic, one he remembered all too well from the night he lost Noah. A fear that life was slipping between his fingers and that doing nothing would make him complicit in its loss. He gently touched her shoulder, and she stirred slightly but didn't wake. Her face tightened, as if she were used to waking afraid. He swallowed hard, realizing she might have been living like this for longer than one night. He couldn't let her freeze. Billionaire or not, CEO or not, he was a human being first. And something inside him whispered that helping her might also help mend parts of himself he had long ignored. He lifted her carefully into his arms. She was so light, too light, and her small hands instinctively gripped his coat. As he carried her to his car, he felt a wave of protectiveness he hadn't felt since Noah. Driving through the snowy streets toward the nearest emergency shelter, he couldn't stop glancing at her in the rearview mirror, making sure she was still breathing, still warm enough, still safe. Every mile felt like a vow forming in his chest. At the shelter, the staff greeted him with surprise. They were used to exhausted parents, not CEOs in $1,000 coats cradling lost children. As they checked the girl, whom they estimated to be about 6 years old, Harrison waited anxiously. She eventually woke, startled and frightened, shrinking back from the unfamiliar faces. But when her eyes met Harrison's, something softened. Her name, she told them timidly, was Sarah. She didn't know where her mother was. She didn't know where home was anymore. Her voice cracked with a quiet resignation that no child should ever have to learn. The shelter staff explained the process, telling Harrison that Child Protective Services would take over. But as he watched Sarah cling to the thin blanket around her shoulders, his heart twisted. He had spent years building a life defined by control, structure, and logic, but now he found himself unable to walk away. Something rooted him to the spot. He stayed through the paperwork. He stayed while they checked her vitals. He stayed when she looked up at him with eyes full of fear and hope. And when the social worker asked whether he had any connection to the child, Harrison surprised himself with the truth that tumbled out, not yet. For days afterward, he couldn't stop thinking about her. He visited the shelter again under the pretense of donating supplies, but the truth was that he needed to see her. Each visit unraveled him in a different way. Sometimes she smiled, and sometimes she cried, but every time she held his hand, he felt something inside him shifting, warming, healing. She began to trust him, and he began to imagine what life could look like if he stopped running from his own grief. Her story eventually emerged. Her mother had disappeared after losing their apartment, leaving Sarah to fend for herself in the chaos of shelters and cold nights. The system was overloaded, and Sarah was slipping through its cracks. Harrison realized that if he walked away now, she might never climb out. So one snowy afternoon, as Sarah played with a teddy bear he had brought her, he made a decision that shocked even himself. He filed to become her foster parent. The legal process was long, filled with scrutiny, interviews, and background checks. A billionaire fostering a child drew attention, and some questioned his motives. But Harrison never wavered. His home, once silent and empty, slowly transformed, warm lights, a decorated bedroom, children's books lining shelves. And on the day Sarah finally stepped inside, holding his hand with cautious excitement, Harrison felt the weight he had carried for years finally lift. Not replaced, Noah would always be part of him, but softened by something new. Hope. Weeks turned into months. Sarah blossomed, her laughter filling hallways that had long echoed with silence. Harrison learned to pack lunches, braid hair, poorly, and read bedtime stories with silly voices. And one night, while tucking her in, she whispered with sleepy gratitude, "I'm glad you found me." That was the moment he realized this wasn't charity or obligation. This was family, born not of blood, but of compassion, healing, and the courage to say yes when life offers a second chance. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it so others can feel its warmth, and subscribe for more stories that remind us goodness is still alive in the world. Before the ending, please comment below, kindness creates miracles. Harrison had once lost everything that made life worth living. But by saving a little girl on a snowy night, he unknowingly saved himself too. And together, in that second chance home filled with laughter, they discovered that sometimes the most powerful words a person can hear are simple, gentle, and life-changing. Come with me.